Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. In today's show, I'm once again delighted to be joined by Colin Crabbe. Colin is a former Formula One team owner, a racing driver, and an eminent restorer and dealer of historic classic racing cars. In this interview, Colin talks about how he became known as one of the last privateers in Formula One, setting up his own team for the 1969 and 1970 Formula One seasons, with the first race being the Monaco Grand Prix. So it's good to be back talking with you again, Colin. One thing we didn't discuss last time was your racing career. Could you just tell us a little about your racing, and particularly the Formula One team that you got together?
It was 60 years ago, which is rather terrifying too. I think there were four of us who thought it'd be quite fun to get involved in Formula One. Two of us were already involved in historic racing. And we thought, why not? If Alexander Hesketh could do it, I can do it. And they were all quite wealthy, and they put their fingers in their pockets and they produced the odd pound note. And if I tell you that a brand new Cosworth engine, which then was, I suppose, 3 years old, we're talking about 1969, I mean, a brand new unit was £7,000. Wow. You know, a unit today is £500,000. You know, it's just ridiculous. We decided the first race we'd enter was Monaco, but we needed a car. So I looked up the motorsport, or was it maybe Petrol Autosport that week, I suppose, and there, looking at me, was a Cooper Maserati. Just about in legal, you know, it was a 3-litre car.
Yeah.
And we hadn't gone down to 1.5-litre formula yet. And this thing had 3 engines, it had 10 wheels. I've never seen piles of spares like you've never seen. And it was £3,000. It's really not a lot of money when you saw what we got. And I was, of course, a Maserati lunatic, having had older Maseratis. And this was the most beautifully made car, the whole thing from end to end. Just by looking at it, it ought to have won a Grand Prix, but of course it was out of date and other excuses, so on and so forth. So anyway, we bought the thing, and I was waiting from midsummer, from sort of 4:30 onwards in the morning for this thing to arrive, which it duly did. And I got very excited. It got unloaded from the lorry, and the lorry pushed off, and I waved goodbye to it, and I leapt into the car. Well, that was a severe error. I couldn't leap out of it again. And I was stuck absolutely, utterly and completely. And I had to wait for the village to wake up to pull me out.
So how long were you in the car for, Colin?
An hour. Sitting just outside this garage.
Yeah.
So that really put paid to my ideas of actually driving a Formula One car in a Formula One race. I did, in fact, later on, I bought 2 or 3 BRM chassis. They had engines which went and did other things. I never got the engines, but I got the chassis. And I built a Formula 5000 car out of one of these chassis. And I drove that, but it was no fun. You know, we put a Ford V8 engine in the back of this thing. It never went properly.
What, you mean it didn't go particularly fast?
It wasn't fast. It handled quite well.
Yeah.
But I was too big for it even then. So I couldn't get my feet on the pedals. It was the usual sort of drama. I had a go at Silverstone once on a BRDC open day in a sort of mock-up Formula One car which they have, which they could lengthen or widen or whatever. So I had it widened and lengthened and got in it. And that was fun.
Yeah.
But I did learn later, never, ever, ever ask a professional driver to drive you, because it's a joke. Because he'll think he's very clever. And he'll either do what Wizzo Williams did with me. He took me out in one of the learner, were they Ford Escorts? I can't remember what they were, but they were something like that. And he rolled the thing at Woodcote with me in it.
Wow.
And apart from I got that awful fright, I've never ever had anybody drive me in any form of sports car ever again. Mm. So with our lovely Cooper, the thing was then to get somebody to drive it. So my old friend Neil Corner was summoned. He of fame in historic cars, but he was a very wealthy chap. He could afford it, and I couldn't. And I said, would you like to drive this thing on a if you break it, you fix it.
That was the deal.
That's very important. And see if you like it. So we went to Madrid, which was where there was what I would call a secondary Formula 1 race. There was a mixture of Formula 1 and Formula 2, Formula A, Formula 5000, Formula 2, you name it, it was all there. Big grid of about 30 cars. And he hopped in the car and he came sixth.
That's pretty good.
He'd never driven the thing before, and he'd never driven a Formula 1 car before. It wasn't bad. Mm. Okay, the car was a bit out of date.
So how many cars would have taken part in that race?
I think about 20, I think.
So coming sixth first time is pretty good.
So, I mean, it was...
It exceeded your expectations?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He did very, very well. And he didn't cost me anything either, which was better yet. So anyway, having sort of decided the car actually went, the next thing was to try and get more power out of it. So I sidled up to BRM, and they had an absolutely marvellous engine man who came from Vanmore. And he worked on the thing for a couple of months. We got about another 30 horsepower out of the engine. So while we weren't getting the power we should have had, if we'd had a modern car, but when we went motor racing, I think...
Can I just interrupt you a second, Colin? For those people who don't know an awful lot about horsepower, an extra 30 horsepower, does that mean that the acceleration improves dramatically? Or
I think everything improves dramatically,
yeah.
As long as you don't blow it up.
Yeah.
But the Cooper produced about 400. The 400, say, 7,000 RPM. The most wonderful noise. It was called the V12. The Cosworth, a V8, produced 460, 480, depending on which series it was. So whatever happened, we were down on power, but it was enough fun to amuse us. Anyway, at that stage, I thought we might as well, because I couldn't get in the thing. Neil had done his run, so I rang up my old mate from previous times, Vic Elford, who I, of course, got to know very well in the sports car days of driving big sports cars. And he said he'd love to drive the car. And he said he'd won the Monte Carlo rally on 2 occasions, and he thought he'd love to have a go in a Formula 1 car at Monaco. It sort of filled his book. So there we were. We had the team. I'll never forget this. And we went to Monaco. It was the Formula 1 car on a trailer, 4-wheel trailer, being pulled behind the company Yellow Transit. It was a pretty seedy-looking lot we were. And accommodation was impossible. So I got accommodation through some pal of mine, which consists of an incredibly grand sort of middle of the 19th century house in the middle of Monaco. So I was very happy. We were content.
Yeah. My
team of mechanics. My father, well, he didn't know the first thing about mechanicking, but he got a ticket. Somebody called Andy Clive, who was a merchant banker in London. He knew nothing about cars, but he was a pal of mine. And Cyril Atkins, who had been head mechanic at BRM's, and another. So we were not quite as well equipped. Is when you go and look out at a modern current Formula One race, there are about 30 mechanics per car.
And how did the other teams view you guys coming in?
Oh, I thought it a bit of a joke, really. And we were a bit of a joke, but we got less and less of a joke as the season went on.
I read somewhere that you were one of the last privateers in Formula One.
I think I was the last privateer in Formula One. I know he's only one of the last. The great privateer of all, of course, Jody just pulled out, which was Rob Walker. So we had Rob Walker. He pulled out, and therefore it was really only me left in.
Yeah. It's interesting that you originally wanted to actually race the cars yourself, but obviously because of your stature, somebody else had. How did you feel when you weren't actually doing the racing?
I was extremely upset, really, because I hadn't worked the fact out I was too big to drive a Formula One car. I'd been statistics, 6'6", guards measurement, 17.5 stone. That's the size of 2 Formula One drivers now. It was just a no-go. It was just something that was never going to happen. And I did miss my racing hugely when driving myself. Because I'd driven cars for years. I'd always had very fast cars. I'd done rallies, I'd done this, that, and the other, and I reckon I knew how to drive.
Yeah.
So does everybody in Formula One. Except for a few people I could name, but I won't.
What does it feel like driving a racing car?
Oh, danger never worried me.
Did it not?
No, danger I couldn't care less about. I had 2 instances in the GT40, which in fact, we were very successful in our GT40 actually. He came a 5th and 6th, and the sort of results we were getting. We came 7th in the 12-hour race at Reims. It was very successful.
Yeah.
But it was big enough. And I remember we took the car. The first time we took it to South Africa. There was a Springbok series. And I must admit, as it was all paid for, our holiday in South Africa seemed a frightfully good idea. And we stayed for 3 months. And we were looked after completely for 3 months. And it was enormous amount of fun. I was sort of midfield. We were a sort of mixture of cars. I mean, there were very fast Porsches driven by a chap who's just died, actually, called Mike Diudi, a very, very good driver, a New Zealander. We had this GT40, which I bought second hand, but I mean, it was only a year old. It only just come out that the previous year. And the first thing we had to do, because I was far too big for it, like hard, too big for everything, sort of thing. But this time I could sit in it, but my head went through the roof.
Really?
So we took it down to Ford Advanced Vehicles at Slough, who built the cars, and they built a thing like a pyramid on top of the
So
door.
you had an extended roof?
Yes.
So you could fit in it?
Yeah, it was known as my brain dome. And only one other person had a brain dome, that was Dan Gurney. Well, he was about nearly...
Would that not slow the car down a bit?
No.
Not really?
Oh, yeah. Aerodynamic? No.
Just yeah.
No. We had terrific fun there. That was when I saw my late and very good friend Jackie's Jimmy Clark driving a Model T Ford into a swimming pool.
Is that right?
Not popular.
He drove?
We were at a party.
Oh, okay.
He thought he'd stir it up. He was full of witticisms. The people who owned the swimming pool were extremely pissed off, as you can imagine. Because I know what swimming pools are like to clean. And this was... Then of course, classic. I find a Grand Prix Maserati from 1934. Then I find another one from 1938. So I'm in seventh heaven. I buy
so
one.
Maserati was your favourite car, was it?
Well, Maserati was my favourite car. I suppose the car that I won the most races in, which was a 3-litre Birdcage, which was a car built in 1967.
Yeah.
I was the only man, I think, who had the guts to ring up Maserati and talk to Mr. Maserati, or Alfieri. I said, good afternoon. I said, my name's Colin Crabbe. Yes. I'd like to buy an old Maserati. You got any? Yes. What do you want? And I came back with this absolutely brand new Maserati, 700 quid.
Really? Wow. And that was the original Mr. Maserati, wasn't it?
Oh God, yeah. No, it was Maserati Brothers. It was certainly a sort of senior man in the business.
Yeah.
And Alfieri, I think it was, I spoke to him at the time. But of course, then I went and raced historic races throughout the 60s.
Well, I was reading in your book about the London to Brighton.
Oh, that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like, I think I'm the only man who's quite happy to drive a 200-mile-an-hour GT40 or a 19-mile-an-hour Delahaye.
A big range of speeds there, Colin.
I got the most enormous pleasure out of driving something that was hugely complicated. And these Brighton cars I wanted were not the ones that did 60 miles an hour, which some of them did. Mercedes, for example. I wanted something with belts, chains, very smelly, very slow, and looking like a carriage.
So one of the original cars that was built.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I had.
Yeah.
I bought in France, I bought an 1897 Delahaye,
Wow.
which had all those attributes. It was, on a good day of the following wind, you get 25 out of it, I suppose. But its normal cruising speed is about 15 to 18. But I took it to Brighton on about 8 different times. I failed to get there once, very early on, because I put it into reverse and it went straight into a tree. The steps at the start in Hyde Park. That was unfortunate. Otherwise, the rest of the time, we got down there, no bother.
Yeah.
Great fun, jolly good car. I mean, I miss not driving now almost more my ancient cars to the modern.
Do you? Is that because you like the challenge of driving a very old car?
I think it's a hell of a challenge. And the older the thing is, the bigger the challenge. Cars were pretty primitive then.
And I guess all cars, cars that were made originally like that, they're all quite different in the way they worked. Whereas now they're all roughly the same, aren't they? They're very generic.
Good point. They basically all had engines that worked more or less the same way as our engines worked. 1-cylinder, 2-cylinder, 3-cylinder. I had one 3-cylinder car. And I bought a number of these cars, of course, over the years in South America, India.
Yeah.
We got a Napier out of India, which belonged to Maharaja of Jaipur, I think. No, it was great fun. So I did 24 Brighton runs.
24?
Yep.
Wow.
So you can count down to sort of 28 years.
And what about other places like Goodwood? Did you do the stuff at Goodwood?
No. I've been to Goodwood once.
Yeah.
I've been to Goodwood once as a spectator. I mean, I never raced at Goodwood.
No.
But having said I'd never raced at Goodwood, not only have I raced at Goodwood, but I've won at Goodwood. But it's not in the records.
Oh, right. How did that happen?
Because I raced in the last ever race meeting at Goodwood. But and we were told, we senior members of the British Racing Drivers Club were told that if we had driven at Goodwood, we would get free access to the great party they have once a year in September, which we've just had.
So that was the incentive.
And when I applied, I said I raced here in 1965, which I did, and they said, well, that's tough. So I never went back.
Going back to collecting cars, how has it changed over the last 50 years?
Oh, only in one way. It's called money.
Price has gone up and up and up.
I mean, what if I were to give you a sort of example? I bought a Testarossa Ferrari. All right, it was a sort of pretty shagged out old thing, and I paid $2,000 for it. But it did happen to be the car that won Le Mans in 1979. That's 69.
Yeah.
59. Let's get this right. God, back. 1959. It's worth £2.5 million now.
So even taking into account inflation, it's relatively gone up.
Oh, relatively, it's gone up hugely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I got it. It was complete. It would have cost me a further £1,500 probably to restore it to the sort of pristine way it is now.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who's interested in doing what you did in terms of going around the world collecting cars?
Find another job.
Find another job. Really, it's changed that much.
I mean, I'm asked by lots of people every year, where do I look for old cars? Well, that was the question I was asking 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And I went to the places which had old cars, which people hadn't been to. I did Russia. I did India, but there was nothing India. Somebody had already been through India. And I did America's cars to be found there still, but you won't get anything very good. And if something very good does turn up, these cars do turn up in auctions, but they're damnably expensive. And if you're being like me and you paid £27.10 for a nice Austin 7, I'm not going to be tempted to pay £2,500 for one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that the market for old cars is finished. The people, well, take Goodwood for a good example. There's about one race you could, for the lesser cars, which is you won't have sort of Sunbeam Talbots or Morris Minors or Middies. You can race modernish cars, but the rest of the cars there are mega money.
So,
and people, and of course, if you've bought a car as a trophy car, I would call it, in fact, you won't run it, you won't drive it.
No.
I mean, I wondered why my lovely Mercedes, which was the Grand Prix car, the one that took all the records and everything, when I apart from selling it to my great friend Neil Corner, he nearly broke it up in the tunnel in Monte Carlo, but he luckily missed both ends. They spun it. I never spun it. I never had a moment's bother with that car. And I won everything I entered in it. W125. Went to Japan, it was never used. It went back to England. Bernie had it, somebody else had it over here. And then it was sold to Germany, and it has actually had a rebuild.
Yeah.
And as far as I can make out, it's been driven at 40 miles an hour. So they were very nice. They sent me a film of it, actually going up the hill at Goodwood.
Yeah. One of the other aspects that I read in your book was you had a stint working Christie's.
I had a stint working at Christie's, and I did enjoy. First of all, I was paid far too much money, which was always nice. because I mentioned the sum, which I won't repeat to you, thinking I'd be thrown out, and they said, yes, that's fine. And the fun working for them was I took sales in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and America. You know, so it was good fun. You were always put up at the best hotels, and you didn't muck about.
No. But this
one particular trip has got.
So rather than sort of searching for cars, this was actually selling cars.
Selling other people's cars.
Yeah.
But there's one sort of quite funny example. Is I was detailed to go to Australia, and they had a woman in charge of the office in Australia, and I discovered where my hotel was. And I said, no, I'm not staying there. Oh, but it's booked for you. I said, I'm not staying there. That's full of hookers, whores, anything. I don't want to go there. It's just revolting. Oh, but the directors love it. I said, well, they can. And I said to the taxi, I said, and it was very difficult to get any accommodation at all. I said, take me to the best hotel. She took me to the Ritz-Carlton or somewhere, and extraordinary. I went in there and produced my Christie's card, no questions asked, and I was put in a suite about the size of this house, with a bottle of brandy, open, waiting, with a glass on the table.
Wow.
I've never had service ever like that. No. And then I made myself fairly unpopular, because I rang the client. As opposed to the client getting hold of me. No, I got that the wrong way around. The client had to ring me at the Ritz-Carlton, as opposed to me ringing the client at Wagga Wagga. Mm. That was not popular at headquarters, but I enjoyed it.
And how long did you work at Christie's for?
3 years.
Okay, you enjoy that, obviously.
Well, I sort of enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because when I first went in, the market was hugely buoyant. It then did a U-turn and went right down. In the mid-90s, it just went right, bottomed out.
Yeah.
And I always said, well, it was because I joined it. But it just did. It's one of these things that just went down. I had a huge, very successful sale of... First of all, directors are not allowed to sell their own cars. So I had a telephone call from an extremely nice man who was the nephew of a chap who I'd sold a car to 20 years before, which happened to be a London bus, double-decker, 1905, the only one in the world. And he had it restored here in England, in the mid-60s, 1960s, in spends no object. It was gorgeous, yeah. With sort of advertisements saying sort of boot polish and things on the side, and Bovril is good for you, and all that sort of thing. And wonderfully complicated. I never did see it drive, but you needed some 3 people on the gear lever to pull it. So I was in America, I got a telephone call from this man, and he said, you know the car you sold my uncle? I said, the bus. It was always known as the bus. I said, yeah, I know it well. What's up? He said, it's mine now, and I've got to sell it. And I've got to sell it quick, I need the money. Will you give me $40,000 for it? I said, yes, I will. Instant decision. It made 600 on the sale, 1,000.
Did it? Wow.
Thank you very much indeed. Mm. And it was bought, an extraordinary thing actually. There were a lot of people interested in it, of course, like so many things. It was wonderful. It came back to Europe. And is now in the National Motor Museum in Holland.
Is it? So it's still around then?
Oh yeah, very, very much so.
Is it the only one of its type?
I mean, the last car I sold in auction was in fact my my Ferrari, which I'd found in Cuba. I'd rebuilt it. It's that car up there. And I put that in an auction here, in America, I mean. And it came straight back to England. Rather bored, I'd already sent it out from England by air freight. Back it came by air freight. It's still owned by the chap who bought it. I've never been so nervous at a sale. There's quite a lot stood on it. That's the wrong word, isn't it? I relied on it rather a lot.
You wanted it to go through smoothly.
I wanted to go for a lot of money.
Yeah, I bet.
And then, of course, throughout all these years I was suffering from my accident, and I got worse and worse until I'm like this now. There's one other story that sort of comes to mind, which was when I was very young. My first book on cars is called Automobiles of the Old Automobiles. I've still got somewhere. It's a sort of little, scrubby little book, small 6x4 sort of thing. A for Albion, Z for Zulu, it was one of those. So I always remember looking at this book and seeing the most enormous Benz. Huge, lovely Benz. I said, God, I'd like that. The museum had gone. The museum was wound up in 1950. And the book still headed in as 1965, by the way. Nobody knew where it had gone, so I forgot all about it. But in 2008, 20 years ago, I got a telephone call from Christie's. We've been offered this car. We don't quite know what to do with it. Would you take it on yourself? I said, yes, I would. I took it on. We drove it for about, I suppose, a quarter of a mile. It was terrifying. The engine was as big as that sofa. It was 6-cylinder, 24-litre, and it went bang every telegraph pole. It was really a sort of thing, what one imagines an ancient car is.
Yeah.
And it had tremendous history. It was used competitively right up into the 30s. I mean, the history of it is divine. Yeah. Captured by the Germans, it had gone to a Belgian who bought it from, I suppose, Benz. It was then taken back to Germany, rebodied as a staff car for Field Marshal, I forget, I did know the name, I can't remember who it was, who was in charge of the Western Front with that. He used to go and inspect the troops in this thing. Well, it was sold after the war for £50. Usually for war sales and everything was sold there. And it was bought by somebody who could go and race at Brooklands. And it was very unsuccessful to start with, until some rather good people got it. And it lapped Brooklands to 143 miles an hour before they withdrew it. They, being Brooklands, said, this guy's going to kill himself. This car, 50 years old, or whatever it was, and it was so bloody quick. It was the most wonderful thing.
So you got hold of it?
I got hold of it.
Yeah.
Let's put it another way. Christie's couldn't work out a deal with the man for some reason. Which is why I said, would I like to have a go? So I rang the man up, and I had the car here in 48 hours.
You obviously did a good deal.
Well, I wouldn't do a deal at all. I said, I'll sell it for you. Which is what happened. And actually somebody else sold, and we split the profits. Wonderful, wonderful car. And that was the last amusing car that I sold.
Yeah.
With the exception of my Model T Ford, which I'd been given as a present in America I rebuilt it here. I was copying a 1914 World War ambulance, sort of canvas sides. Instead of a cross on the side was antique automobiles or complete automobilists, you see. And I drove. There's a Brighton run. It doesn't go from Hyde Park, but it goes from. I can't think what the park is called, in fact, but this is the next park down. It goes to Brighton for commercials only. So I drove this thing down to Brighton on 4 different occasions. Totally and utterly reliable, wonderful thing to drive. You now know why Ford succeeded, others failed.
Yeah.
Even then, which was probably about 2007, 2008, my feet couldn't do it. And it had to go.
And have you got any of these old cars still, Colin?
No.
Do you miss them?
No.
No. One thing I did really...
I've got one old car,
Yeah.
but I've given it to my son. It's my father's BMW,
Wow.
which he bought in 1935 at the motor show.
Oh, so he got it brand new in 1935?
Yeah.
So it's been kept in the family all that time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, isn't it? Yeah. Now, I also...
And I've driven that car across Africa.
Did you?
With
your father, or...?
Oh, no, he died long before. No, I used it as a sort of fun car for doing alcoholic rallies on the continent, basically.
Alcoholic rallies?
Run by Murray Chandon, Hennessy. Good fun. There'd be about 20 of us would go off.
Interestingly, I read in your book about you organised your own rallies, latterly.
I only did it once.
Okay.
And
what made you want to organise your own rally?
because I thought I could do it cheaper than anybody else and better, and I did. But I was only going to do it once.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the arse.
Was that the one in Ireland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very successful. Entirely by invitation. We had 20 people again. I think the whole bloody lot came, I asked. You know, it was rather nice.
Yeah.
Ranging from Lord Bamford down to some German I'd met. And they all came. And we had a hell of a time.
And this would be for a week or so, would it?
Yeah, it must have been about a week. But the organisation,
I should imagine. Yeah.
the cost of running it, I made money out of it. I mean, I didn't mean to lose money,
No.
but I'm just interested in how much it cost. And let's put it like this: it costs a hell of a lot less than other people charging for their rallies. Which I let the other people know. I said, I know what you're charging. Oh, and I said, well, it cost you this, that. Oh, well, you don't know how you found that out, you know.
I think these were all with vintage cars. Weren't they?
Oh, Lord, yes. No, I was very selective. We only had vintage cars.
So, okay, you've got to...
I say vintage cars, there were people coming in Ferraris.
Yeah. So if you've got 20 people, possibly 10 cars, perhaps, what happens is some of these older cars, obviously, they're not going to run perfectly. All that
We have a breakdown car.
Right, so that all adds to the
With
cost.
spare tyres and
Yeah.
a mechanic driving it.
Right, okay. Yeah. And did you have any breakdowns en route?
Not that I can remember.
No. That's good.
And it was rather fun. This was my own rally. My children came and drove on it.
Oh, did they? Oh, fantastic.
My daughter, what did she say with the immortal words? She was aged, I suppose, about 20. She made some particularly stupid remark, which we all keeled over about. She got lost. Yeah, I can't remember why, but she did. My son and one daughter, and my son went with her, that's right. So it was lost in 7, which again we would buy back if the man, I think we will buy it back, because the man said he'll sell it to us. Won't be for me, it'll be for my son, Alistair. Because it was sort of slightly custom made for me, lengthwise. And highly drivable. We had the engine really sort of put together by a Formula One man. So in fact you could override.
Did you do any of the work on the cars yourself, Colin?
Not with my own fair hand, no.
No.
I'm not a mechanic.
No.
I'm a delegator.
You got it all together.
And I say, you and you fix it. And they would.
Yeah.
I had the same mechanics for years. And I used to sort of bleed BRM. They would be underpaid or be cursed.
And these are the people just north of here, in Bourne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They ran Formula One team.
So you've got the best mechanics.
If they got pissed off, they came to me. As they did get pissed off, they came to me. First to do it was the team manager, or the chief mechanic of Vanwell, who'd gone to BRM. Unhappy with BRM, so he came to me. He came to me for years.
Well, it's been great talking to you again, Colin. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Well, I'm a bit rusty in my stories, because this all happened. It's a terrifying thought. But it happened, how long ago was that? It was 30 years ago, more, 30, 40 years ago.
No, some really
And
interesting.
the mind isn't as good as it used to be.
Tell me about
The
it.
content is, but...
There's some fascinating stories. I wish I could stay longer and do more stories with you, because there's plenty there.
Oh, you'd get stuff out of me, which I'd forgotten about.
I think we got one or two of those today, didn't we?
There are one or two, but there's one or two which can't be told.
No. Okay. Lovely talking to you. Bye-bye.
It's a pleasure.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.